Almost. Major. Holy fucking shit, this is major!
Being that we're talking about double feature of horror movies, which we haven't done since the Blair Witch Project, which is a 10 out of 10, and Book of Shadows, which is also a 10 out of 10, we have on Mary Beth McAndrews as our guest, who does 2 horror podcasts. I only plugged one in the other one, and I'm very sorry. If you want to leave, it's okay. Her other one is Watch Once, Never Again, where she talks about movies that are, so bad you would only want to watch them once, and very curious, what is the worst? You've done about, 40 episodes of it right now?
So we've done about 40 episodes. Yeah, about 40 episodes. And it's disturbing films. So it's like films that are so fucked up movies that we'll watch and tell you about so you don't have to watch them yourself and experience them for yourself.
Right. And of course, my question is, what's the worst one you've watched so far for this?
So, okay. A lot of the ones that are technically Solo and, Antichrist, I had seen those before. So it wasn't as shocking because I kind of knew what to expect. Mm-hmm. But the one that I watched for the first time that really fucked me up was Eden Lake.
Oh, that ending is fucked.
Yeah, that movie ruined me. I did not I knew it was rough. And but that ending,
oh my god!
But it's so fucking brutal. They light a kid on fire. She puts her nasty, dirty. She gets in that nasty trash. The worst part of that movie is when she gets into that nasty trash can. I don't think. Right. I just as some she was covered in cuts and she's in a nasty trash can, and that movie just made me feel so fucking ill.
Yeah.
It is so gross and nihilistic, and I loved it, which is the whole fucked up thing about me.
It's good. It's good. I did like it.
It's so good. And then, but I also will never watch it again.
Yeah.
I probably will, but
I mean, yeah.
It's unfortunately, I know that I probably will because it is a really awesome, awesome horror experience if you can put yourself through that. But it's fucking brutal.
Yeah.
That's how you do torture porn to me, and that is the torture porn movie we should be talking about, other than Saw and Hostel. Well, Saw and Hostel obviously, but I think this one deserves more attention as a pinnacle of that shit.
It has Michael Fassbender getting fucked up for an hour and a half.
Yeah, and
what more do you want?
Kelly Riley, and she's the final girl character. But Michael Fassbender's getting his ass beat by teenagers half the time. He's wrapped up in barbed wire.
That's the brilliant thing about that movie is it puts you in that ethical conundrum of they're just kids.
The bad guys are fucking teenagers, and it's about toxic masculinity in these small British towns, and it's these kids are kind of conditioned for violence, and it's so weird because obviously the kids are fucked up, but it's you said there's an ethical conundrum. It's just very bizarre.
Yeah,
I think
there's a
sorry. I was about to ask if you've seen this movie because the only movie I've ever seen where I'm I don't think I can ever watch that again, but I think it's brilliant. It's lumped into French New Extremity, but it's barely a horror movie, but it is pretty gory. It's called In My Skin. Have you seen that one?
Oh yeah.
That's a horror movie.
Yeah.
It's totally a horror
movie.
That's the only new French Extremity I haven't seen. I've been meaning to watch it, but I haven't.
It's so fucking good, but self-harm is the one thing that I find to be very triggering. I think it's an amazing portrayal of self-harm and depression and how there is no rhyme or reason for it, because I think that's what makes that movie so powerful. But that movie, I felt my stomach in knots and felt nauseous and was am I gonna make it through this? Because I really want to, because it's great, but that's the one thing that I'm just oh my god, this is the one thing I can't stomach. It is fantastic though, and if anyone's interested in it.
Yeah, and that writer-director Marina Devan, her follow-up movies Don't Look Back and Dark Touch, they're kind of interesting too. They're not, I don't think they're quite on the level as In My Skin, but they're both of merit and interesting, dealing with kind of similar themes as those two movies. So we'd recommend those two.
I forgot, before we started, I was talking about Serbian film and August Underground, blah, blah, blah. I haven't done this in 10 years because my girlfriend was like, oh, I watched The Nightingale and you really got to watch it. It is rough and blah, blah, blah. And I was just movies don't affect me. I'll be fine. 30 minutes into that movie, I turned it off and I was like, I do not know if I can finish this fucking movie, dude. And I was I did laundry.
Oh, we did that for the show, and I saw that in theaters by myself.
Oh my god.
I saw that in a movie theater alone at like 12 p.m. on like a Tuesday.
Oh my god.
I mean,
it was whack.
Yeah, I also
fucked up.
I saw it in theaters too, but I went with two friends, and it hadn't even opened yet. It was a part of our independent film festival, Boston, and it was on a Friday night, and we were like, where is everyone? That's a new Jennifer Kent film, and we didn't know what we were getting into, and then the movie started, and we were just like, I remember, like, my friends and I were looking at each other like, holy shit. Like, I mean, it's a great movie, but also...
Oh,
yeah, it's good.
Incredible,
Yeah.
but it is...
Yeah, that scene, like... I was like, I got up and I was like, I'm gonna go do laundry. I'm gonna go, look at cat videos, something. Like, I do not know if I can finish this movie because that scene is entirely fucked up. And then I finished it.
There was also an after party we went to at a Candlepin bowling alley in Somerville, Massachusetts, and the people who were there for a previous movie just watched us all crawl in, just like shaken. Like, they were just like,
What'd you guys watch?
We all know what you just watched. Like, yeah.
And then the other one that I wanted to mention that actually I think we talked about in the previous episode, Dancer in the Dark, was also the other fucked up one that I just recently watched that I had never seen before. And good God,
that ending as well. It stays with you.
I've seen a lot of Lars von Trier films multiple times, particular Melancholia I think is a masterpiece. But I've even seen Dogville twice. I've never seen Dancer in the Dark more than once. That's another one. Yeah.
Good. Like, it's gorgeous. Like, I don't really like Lars von Trier. I got a lot of... you can listen to podcast series about how I feel about his complicated weirdness.
Yeah.
But, that movie's real... despite the fact he definitely abused Bjork.
Yeah. That's the other upsetting thing about it. Yeah.
I know. Have you seen Breaking the Waves?
Yes.
That's fucking...
I have not.
That is a fucking weird movie.
Oh, yeah. No, my parents loved that movie for some reason. They were
really?
Yeah.
That movie?
Yeah. My dad was like, that performance was astonishing. I'm like, right? And I'm like, I never can picture you ever watching this.
Like, they're not wrong, but like, that's a... All right.
Yeah. No, I got that for my birthday from them one year on Criterion because they were like, this is a great movie. And
you're like...
And I'm pretty sure I had like a whole bottle of wine watching that movie. Like, it's just like...
I definitely smoked a bowl or two while watching that movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, we've watched some really incredible stuff and some really difficult stuff. And like... because we're such fucked up people, it's usually like not our first time watching these movies because that is, but yeah, it's taxing. I will say that podcast is way more taxing than I thought. I was like, oh, I can do this. It's a little hard.
I mean, there are times where we're doing stuff for this podcast where I'm like, oh, yep, I need to watch this before tomorrow, and like most of our films are like, I mean, apart from like the one we just covered, Strangeland, like the content isn't like the worst, so I can only imagine like, yeah, doing that and being like, no, I need to like actually get this done tonight when you might have had a bad day or like...
Yeah, like, hey, you gotta watch Antichrist. I'm like,
It's just like, can I watch that when I feel like it? Nope, you gotta watch it before we record. It's like, I'm not in the right... Okay, fine.
I don't want to do it.
I do recommend that you cover, for Watch Once Never Again, to cover Boat Trip from 2002. That's a good... That's good.
When you guys posted about it, it unlocked a memory of watching that movie, and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm back. I forgot about that movie." Oh, anyway,
I would watch every movie you have podcasted about because I've probably seen most of them because unpopular teenager, and I would probably watch all of those again before I'd be like, all right, I'm gonna put on Boat Trip. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. Welcome to Almost Major, a podcast where we talk about many major studios and the films they released. We are talking today about Sleepless from 2001 from Dario Argento. My name is Kevin Tudor. I'm here with Brighton Doyle.
Hello.
And Charlie Nash.
Hello.
And we are once again joined by our special guest, Mary Beth McAndrews from the Scarred from Life podcast, from the Watch One Never Again, from Sorry, this podcast would be an hour if I listed off all the shit. My God. How are you?
Lovely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be back.
For everybody out there, it's been a week. For everybody, for us in this chat, it's been 20 minutes. Yeah. How have you been in the 20 minutes we haven't talked to you?
Yeah. Great. I ate a piece of bread. Hell yeah. It was incredible. Thank you.
Sleepless from 2001 was released in the U.S. on August 24th, 2001. I believe, since it is an Italian movie, it was released early 2001 in Italy. Top 5 films that week. It is all bangers. I've seen them all. Greatness. Not really. But top 5 films that week: American Pie 2, Rush Hour 2, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, The Others, and Rat Race.
Oh my god.
I've seen Rat Race so many times as a kid on TV and DVD. Holy crap.
Rat Race was always on TV.
Yeah.
Yes.
I got it on DVD for my birthday, and I had a sleepover party where we watched Rat Race when I was like 10.
Wait, I think I did too. That is a similar memory that I have about a slumber party in Rat Race. Like,
I have a memory of during elementary school, we used to have like a 1-2 hour program where you'd stay after school and then your parents would pick you up and whatnot, and you'd do activities, and on Fridays we'd watch movies, and typically they were G and PG, and I guess one of the people who did all of this, she rented Rat Race and it popped it in and it was like PG-13, and everybody was just like, fucking 1 through 5th graders were like, holy shit, and they were just like, oh fuck, I didn't know this was PG-13, but we have nothing else to watch. And I was like, I've seen it, it's not that bad. There is a part where you see a side boob, but that's it. And they were like, thank you.
Glad you had that knowledge ready to go.
I was like, it has, in the rating reasons, it says brief nudity, but we will be all fine. I was the popular kid. Rat Race is also a movie, like a few months ago, we brought it up on our Cinephile thing, and I was like, Rat Race, that movie's, oh man, that's a product of his time, that's not good. And then for 20 minutes we were just like, oh yeah, but there is that one part, and oh yeah, there is that one part, and then by the end of it was like, guys, is Rat Race a masterpiece? Is that
good or bad? Bits in that movie are just like burned into my brain because I've seen it so many times. Like when Rowan Atkinson is like, look, a drifter, and he like jumps on the train, like just like leaps onto it, and it's just like whizzing by. I just
like people are like, Kathy Bates, oh, Misery, yeah, won the Oscar, fantastic. And then I'm just like, yeah, you should have bought a squirrel. That's what I think.
It is kind of, well, that's kind of funny how you think about how the type of humor doesn't really exist anymore, even though it was only 20 years ago. Like, you try explaining that movie to people, and you're like, so then, yeah, they drive off a cliff because they didn't buy a squirrel, and Rowan Atkinson's with Wayne Knight, and he's bringing a heart transplant, and then they steal a rocket car, and there's a cow tied to a hot air
You're like,
balloon.
Jesus, how does this end? Well.
At a Smash Mouth concert. Not to mention, we talk about this all the time. I'm not sure if it's on the pod. I'm sorry for repeating it. But the funniest thing about that is they find the bag of money behind... They're like backstage of the Smash Mouth concert, and there's no noise. Nothing. Just like a silent black room, and then the curtain goes up and they're like mid-song, and it's just like the loudest thing in the world. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. And then I'm pretty sure it's John Lovitz's kid who has to go, whoa, it's Smash Mouth. Like, it has to announce who we are looking at. Yeah.
This is the most I've talked about Rat Race in my entire life.
We can hold the record. We can keep going.
This is incredible. Yeah. Thank you so much.
I saw it at a antique mall that I've been getting $1 DVDs, and it's there, and I'm just like, nobody's gonna get it, so I don't have to get it right now, but I'm gonna stash it away. I'm gonna buy Rat Race, okay? It's gonna go in the basement DVDs where I don't want people to know that I own it, but
the shame shelf.
Yeah, where like I picked up The Net and Dracula 2000. That's in the back of the back, okay?
Hell yeah.
Kevin, our basement DVDs will align because I also have a copy of Rat Race in my parents' basement.
Also,
so.
why the fuck are we like this that we're buying movies we hate? Like, what is wrong
because
with movie people as a whatever, we're so fucking weird. Like, I will buy movies I hate just to have it. Why?
I have multiple movies I gave a half star that I think are terrible, and I was like, $1? Yeah! All right.
Yeah.
What is it? Why do we do this? It's incredible. It's just, when I talk to people, like, movie people, because a lot of my friends, like, here, I'm like, my fiance, like, I don't fucking understand. I'm like, no, you don't understand the power of just holding it in my hands. Like, you hate that movie. I don't care. I need to have it on the shelf.
Do you want me to just own movies I love? What is that about? You want me to just be like, you want to watch a movie that's great? No. I'm going to put on Lost Souls. Okay. What else garbage did I get? The 4-pack that I got of Dreamcatcher, Gothica, Queens of the Damned, and Ghost Ship for $1. That is totally the greatest dollar I've ever spent.
That is the best dollar you've ever spent, because that's an iconic quadrilogy right there. Yeah. Wow.
I just watched Dreamcatcher for the first time. That movie is fucking bananas.
Oh, it's insane.
It's insane. I read that book in middle school. I should not have read that book in middle school. I was like, oh, he's shitting aliens. What the fuck is this?
I was in like a book club, like a middle school book club run by my local library, and they picked that. It was my first Stephen King book. No! We didn't talk about Dreamcatcher. Yeah.
There's like that. Okay, we're so off track. I'm so sorry. I'm late.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine.
No, this is fantastic. Do we want to like riff 5-10 minutes on Rush Hour 2 or just Rad Race?
Well, it is funny that you said the first Rush Hour was in the box. Wasn't that in the box office as well?
Yes.
Yes. That's so funny. Wow.
Yeah.
The Others is also a good movie. The kind of horror movie they don't make anymore.
Yeah.
We'll be talking about that director Alejandro Amenabar, because he did Abre los Ojos, which was remade into Vanilla Sky, but that Abre los Ojos was an artisan release, so we'll be talking about that very soon at some point.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Which he also did Thesis, which is a good time. It's a little too long, but that's a pretty good movie. Moving on track. Number 1 song in the U.S. this week is Fallen by Alicia Keys, which I do know. Number 1 song in Canada was Elevation by U2. So of course, United States wins again.
Was that the theme song for the first Lara Croft film?
Oh,
I swear to God it was. I swear there's I saw the music video on VH1.
But I thought the theme song for the first Tomb Raider was "Did My Time" by Korn, which Angelina Jolie is in the music video for. I thought that was the theme song.
Charlie, it says a different mix of the song entitled "The Tomb Raider Mix" was included in the soundtrack of the 2001 film Lara Croft Tomb Raider.
Excuse me. I'm
extra
sorry.
Embarrassing. I've never even seen Lara Croft Tomb Raider.
I've seen them both. Yes,
they are incredible films.
I'm sorry. "Did My Time" by Korn was the theme song for Cradle of Life Tomb Raider in 2003. My bad. My bad. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just embarrassing myself with the new metal facts. I'm really sorry. The budget for Sleepless was $4 million. I could not find the U.S. gross whatsoever. It was release limited, so I doubt it did much. Worldwide gross of $158,000. Sleepless is about an insomniac detective played by Max von Sydow. Comes out of retirement to track a serial killer who copies a string of old murders. Pretty to the point. Directed by Dario Argento. Prior to this, Suspiria in 1977, Deep Red in 1975. After this, The Card Player in 2003, a few episodes of Masters of Horror, and is releasing his first movie in a decade this year called Black Glasses, which I looked up, and the IMDb trivia for this movie says that they, both him and the co-writer Franco Ferrini, wrote a sequel in 2002, but shelved it. And it said it was going to be called Black Glasses. And this movie that's coming out is called Black Glasses. That's supposed to be a sequel. But I looked at the plot summary of the movie that's coming out this year, and I don't know how it's a sequel, but regardless. Written by Dario Argento and Franco Ferrini. Prior to this, Ferrini co-wrote Once Upon a Time in America in 1984. They together co-wrote Demons and Phenomena in 1985 with Argento. And
Demons
after
is good.
this, Demons rule.
Yeah.
So is Phenomena.
I need to watch that, yeah. And also co-wrote Argento's movie that's dropping this year, starring Max von Sydow as Moretti. And just to be a little shit, prior to this, he was in Exorcist 2 in 1977, and then after this, in Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close in 2011.
Oscar nominated for that movie.
Oh my God.
Wait, was he really?
Yes.
Yeah.
I got in a fight with my ex-boyfriend because I didn't want to see that movie.
Emphasis on X. Yes. Oh my goodness. Why don't you want to watch it? Tom Hanks is in it. Like, no.
And to be fair, I was probably being shitty because he did go see a lot of stuff he probably didn't want to go see with me. And for the record, we're still friends. It's just that...
It's just an incredible series of words strung together.
Yeah. Also, not that it was anywhere near this time, but my dad did work in the World Trade Center at one point in time, way before 9/11. So, like, yeah, I didn't really feel like wanting to watch that. I mean, I still haven't seen it to this day. It looks like a piece of shit.
You're like, I'll watch Remember Me, but not Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close.
The ending of Remember Me is all I've seen, and that's a completely different story.
Oh my god. Yeah, I unfortunately watched Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close when I was watching as much Sandra Bullock movies as I could. Yeah, it's fucking awful. I don't think Max von Sydow's been in any other movies, but I could be wrong. Anyways, Stefano Dianesi as Giacomo. Sorry, very white. I'm trying my best.
I think it's Giacomo.
Yes, you were
Giacomo.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Chiari Caselli as Gloria. Prior to this, she was in My Private Idaho, and she's also uncredited in the Pasolini movie 2014 as like a voice or something like that.
I have seen My Own Private Idaho multiple times. River Phoenix's performance in that movie is one of my favorites of all time. I cannot point her out in that movie as anyone.
Right.
I feel terrible saying that. I don't know. Who is she? I don't know.
Oh, I do not know. Like, I think these are really small parts because the rest of the people I'm going to list are all pretty much extensively work in Italian movies. So, but yeah, I couldn't tell you. Gabrielle Lavia as Mr. Betty, previously worked with Argento on Deep Red and in Inferno. For the trivia, I couldn't really find any trivia or interviews with Argento. There is an interview with Argento on the Blu-ray, but it doesn't give much behind-the-scenes info besides, like, working with everybody was so fun, and it was so much fun to come back to Giallo films after not making one in a while, so...
I have a book on Dario Argento. This movie is not even mentioned in it. Not even as, like, a footnote. It's very bizarre.
Yeah, and the reviews, I only found, like, a few reviews from the time, like, by, like, legitimate publications, like, Slant and BBC movies, and they're middling reviews, I would say. I mean, BBC movies, it looks like the reviewer gave it 4 out of 5, but then, like, Slate gave it 2.5. Variety says, like, it seems like something that you would just, like, watch on, like, it seems like kind of like just like a fall from grace and everything they say. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just like one of, I feel like that's like kind of the rep for like a lot of, I have not seen a lot of Argento movies, but I feel like the rep is that like most of his movies after like sort of like the famous ones that Kevin was naming earlier, like they are not as well liked as the more famous ones. I don't know if I'm maybe there are Emma fans that like really like them, but I feel like
right.
Yeah,
I've definitely heard that once he starts casting his daughter in movies, that people are just like, what are we doing? You got some good ideas and whatnot, but yeah, I've only seen a few of his like 70s and 80s classic ones, so this is the only like one of recent memory from him that I've seen.
Murders like these are not accidental. They're premeditated. He likes to hurt. He likes to hurt human beings. His is not an illness you can cure.
He's gonna kill me!
Where are you? I'll find you. No fingerprints and nothing to do with DNA on. How are you going to catch him?
Initial thoughts. I will go first. I will say that I had very high expectations after the first like 20-25 minutes of this were like really fucking fantastic. And then it's just really long and kind of drags. And then the story of it all is very basic, but it gets dragged out like so much, like there's so much going on when there's really not. Like Max von Sydow's doing a good job and a few other people, but it's just... It after the first like 20-25 minutes like on that train and all of that is really really fantastic and whatnot, and just feels like you watch that and you're like, oh man, Argento hasn't lost a step, and then you watch the rest of it and you're like, oh man, he should have hired an editor. But it's an interesting enough story, and then it gets to the fucking wackadoo ending that's kind of all over the place. But yeah, it's definitely, it never recaptures like the first 20-25 minutes, especially when it goes back to just having kill scenes and whatnot. Like there is a cool scene where it's like filming the carpet and like if this place where all the people are walking and whatnot, and then you see the guy that's obviously the killer in like black boots walking, and then you see another pair of feet, and then those feet get like picked up because he's like strangling her and whatnot. I'm like, that's inspired, like that's kind of cool. But yeah, I kind of, as much as I was like, hell yeah, I'm gonna watch Strangeland, this one was kind of daunting, I think, just because the 2 hours of it all. And then I watched it and I was just like, okay, I did have kind of a reason to be daunted by this, by the run time, because it's stretched out for way too long. I feel like this could have been a lean like 80-90 minute just wild time, but oh well, not the worst. It's my least favorite Argento that I've seen, but I've only seen this, Opera, Deep Red, and Suspiria, and those three you really can't go wrong with. But Charlie, initial thoughts?
Yeah, I'm pretty much on the exact same page. I love most of the Argento films I've seen. I mean, Suspiria and Deep Red and Phenomena, Opera, Bird, The Crystal Plumage, Inferno. Love all of those. I agree with you. I was not really familiar with this one. I, like you, thought the first 15-20 minutes were actually really inspired. And I went into this movie hoping that I was going to love it, because there are a lot of horror auteurs who have gotten that rap around this time period, like 2000, 2001. Like, I like later De Palma, and I like later John Carpenter films. Like, I think Ghost of Mars is a blast, for example. And, you know, I was like, well, maybe it was just the time period, and like maybe there's actually a lot of stuff. And there are some inspired moments, as you said, Kevin, but I completely agree with you that it really drags during that middle section. Like, I got like sleepy at one point, because you're right, it is so basic. And like, I like Max von Sydow. I love the relationship he has with his parakeet. We're asking what exactly it was. I thought that was really nice. He's clearly having fun. You know, the train sequence at the beginning reminded me a lot of the train sequence in like Dressed to Kill, and then they even have like that kind of fake out that I thought was actually really clever, where I'm like, oh, it is kind of like Dressed to Kill, because this one woman's going to be seeing the murder, and then she's going to be in on it, and then they kill her immediately, and I was like, oh, I actually didn't see that coming at all. But then, yeah, it doesn't have, I mean, the main thing I love about his older films is just the pure candy-colored aesthetic of it. The Goblin score here is fine. I mean,
it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
It's not my favorite thing they've done. It's very 2001. You know, I guess I had higher hopes for it. And I actually kind of liked the last 10 minutes, just because it did get that kind of kooky again, where it just was like ridiculous with the biles piling up and the fake outs and the double, you know, like, first you think it's this person, then you think it's this person, and it's actually this person. I will say, I mean, we were talking about it too last night, Bryden. There's some very funky editing choices in this movie. Like at one point, it just cuts to like this woman in a diner, and it just cuts to her close up on her face, and then it cut, and I'm just like, that was like 20 seconds. I don't know what I just looked at, but that was like, I don't, like, I get what the movie's doing. She's going to be the next victim, but it was just so weird. Yeah, I think, yeah, exactly what you said, Kevin. If you stripped it down to 90 minutes, made it a little juicier, and also just, I miss, you know, I'm not saying I don't want Argento to never grow as an artist or anything like that, but like the aesthetic here, like I missed kind of the weird otherworldly vibe that, like, you know, his visuals and his even the score kind of provided. And here it did kind of feel like one of those early aughts thrillers, just Argento happened to be behind it, and there are nice visual flourishes. I do think I laughed out loud really hard at the final kill, which we'll get into. I thought that was a nice little sick visual gag, but yeah, definitely kind of disappointed. The only Argento film I have seen that I didn't really care for. I would never say to anyone don't see it, because especially like if you're interested in his, you know, filmography, it's not the worst. You know, there are enough things in it for me to like say it's worth checking out as a curiosity, but yeah, there's some. It's a bit of a slog for, I'd say, a good chunk of it. Right.
Mary Beth, what did you think?
Well, besides the fact that I had a really hard time finding it, and then the internet was fighting me to watch it, I agree with everything everyone is saying. Like, I don't have an original thought. I apologize with that. It's fascinating to see Argento in the 2000s, I will say, because I love his filmography, his early stuff. Like, Phenomena is one of my all-time favorite movies. That shit is insane.
It's amazing.
I love Suspiria. Yeah. I love Deep Red. I mean, I love all of his work. But it's very fascinating to see his sensibilities put into the 2000s. And it in some ways it works, and in some ways it does not. And I think by no stretch of the imagination is it like a terrible movie. And I think it is a really interesting like return to form for him, because I think, you know, he hadn't made something in that style, and trying to get the giallo vibe in his kind of giallo vibe in this time period was very rocky. And it wasn't always bad, but it wasn't always successful either, because he's kind of old. And like that's fine. But yeah, very similar in terms of like, also just, I love Italian horror, but the fucking dub performances in these movies are so hard for me to get used to. Like, I know I've watched a decent number of these kinds of movies, and I still cannot like totally deal with the lack of like any conviction in anyone's performance and line delivery.
Right, it's so strange. You just like have to come in and be like, okay, typically I look for acting of like emotion and whatnot. I just have to forget that and try to meet the movie on the weird dub terms. Yeah,
but the fact that this one seems like it takes more in place in reality made it even weirder.
See, that's the thing. It's like it felt like it didn't feel like it didn't have that like weird ethereal vibe that in the other ones I can kind of get into, like it's a weird fantasy dissociation from reality. But this one was much more like grounded in reality. So I was like, this is really just feels like a bad B movie, which was shitty because it's Argento, but it felt like a bad B movie with like that kind of the line reads for dubbing.
Yeah, especially like that. I think it's like a 10-minute scene with like 4 people just sitting at a table with. That's when the dubbing really starts to. I'm just like, there's nothing like visually I'm seeing. It's just like guys being like just talking, and it really takes me out because like like you were saying, like you watch Suspiria and the off-kilter dubbing of that kind of works with what you're seeing because it's just so ethereal and weird that you're just like, okay, I buy into it. But when it's like 4 people at a table at a restaurant just talking, I'm just like, this is a little strange. Bryden, what do you think?
Yeah. I'm the weird one here that this was my first Argento that I'd ever seen. I had never seen.
Really?
I know. Yeah, I watched Suspiria. I did watch the original Suspiria the other day to have like at least a little bit of context on this guy's career. I'm looking forward to catching up with more because Suspiria is fantastic, and it was really cool watching these two movies like basically back to back, or like at least a day, only a day apart from each other, and seeing kind of like the certain like visuals being echoed in this one, like shots of like, you know, sort of like the mystery of like, ooh, like what's this silhouette doing behind the mirror and behind like this curtain or whatever, like when Giacomo like thinks that like his love interest is being like strangled behind like the curtain, and he goes around, it's like, oh, it's just like you're helping like prep for like the stage performance or whatever. And or like the uses of color are really distinctive too. I think the thing that, so I kind of like this movie. It is definitely a mess. I agree with Kevin and everyone else here that like the movie starts stronger than it finishes. Definitely, the problem is like I think the direction like really comes to life in all the murder sequences with like all the cuts and like the lighting choices and the music cues. That all feels like just like orchestrated like clockwork and everything. Like every choice feels like totally germane. Whereas like in the dialogue scenes, I feel like it's like him just like trying shit out, and like it doesn't really have like a whole lot of like motivation. Like it'll be like having a conversation at like a dinner table, like a lot of like long conversation scenes where I'm just like, I'm not entirely sure why the camera is like placed in this way. Like there's one scene where it's Max von Sydow and another cop are like talking when they're going to exhume the corpse of who they think the killer is, and for some reason the camera like just like drifts over to like follow another couple like going to a grave, and like we don't know who this couple is. We never see them again. And I'm just like, I'm not, and it's like, well, you're drawing my attention to a different part of the screen. And that's like, you're at least doing something to get me to notice something on what's going on screen, but I don't really know what the motivation is. And I feel like that's where Argento kind of struggles throughout the rest of the movie. Whereas in something like Suspiria, I feel like even in the horror sequences and the non-horror sequences, every choice feels like it's like contributing to the mood in a way that like
Absolutely,
is effective.
Yeah.
And yeah, like the reality of it too, and as Mary Beth was talking about, like how this movie is like, it does like feel like a little bit more grounded than something like Suspiria. I feel like the kind of choppiness of like the pacing and like the editing like doesn't whereas like that would like kind of throw me off in something that is like a little more supernatural or like otherworldly. It feels just kind of janky here. Like there's like one scene where like the camera, it's like the Goblin score is playing while the camera's like looking up like at like at, like the roof of a building and like looking at like the sky and everything, and like the music is like, you know, crescendoing and everything, and then like before the note has even finished, it just drops us into like a new dialogue scene, like just like so abruptly, and I'm like thinking it feels like that wasn't where the edit should have like come. It feels like you should have maybe like let that note finish and then like cut into the new scene. I mean, that's like, I'm getting a little bit granular here with the details, but it's just like little things like that that kind of like add up to like the sloppy pacing with like the 2-hour runtime. However, I do think there is enough stuff here with like the set pieces that like help my interest throughout the runtime. And I think Von Sydow is like the one actor who I think escapes like the awkwardness of the dubbing. I feel like his sort of like gentle demeanor like is like a nice grounding force throughout the whole movie. Like Charlie said, the scenes where he's like offering coffee to his parrot, saying like, "Would you like coffee? It's great for the memory." Like that is like just sort of like the jokey sort of like doddering old man. Like I find that very, very comforting in a movie that is like very violent a lot of the time. And I did like the wackadoo twist at the end. I was not expecting, I guess kind of early who the killer might be, but I did not know how they were going to be the killer at the end of the movie. So I did appreciate that twist, which did make me laugh out loud. But yeah, the ending of this movie is like super abrupt, and it feels like it gets like the credits start rolling like 10 minutes after, or like 10 seconds after like the whole thing is wrapped up, and it's like, okay, this feels like a little bit rushed, but I don't know. There's some interesting stuff here all the same. I'm glad I saw it at least.
Yeah, I'm seeing here that Max von Sydow insisted that the parrot in the film be called Marcello. He was like, "I'm going to be in this movie. You're going to name this fucking parrot what I want." Yeah. Translated into English, the film's Italian title means "I'm not sleepy." That would have been a better title.
I did like do the in my notes when like it's the suspected killer's mom like comes to visit Max von Sydow, and they like it says like, "Oh yeah, I have trouble sleeping." I wrote my notes like, so they're the ones who are sleepless. It was just like
right,
Leonardo
yeah,
DiCaprio pointing meme sort of thing.
Yeah, if my girlfriend would have been awake, I'd be like, "That's Sleepless," and then she would have kicked me out.
Oh, I just feel like again, like I don't watch Argento films. Like usually there are like mysteries, and sometimes they're really clever, and sometimes they're not, and it doesn't really matter as long as the vibe and the mood and you know, the general aesthetic is like really stunning. And here the movie just starts off with a Turin 1983, and the kid, "I'm gonna find out who killed your mother," and I'm just like, "Oh, dwarf killer? Oh, that kid fucking killed her." But like it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter, except that they make so much of this movie about the case, and it's not really, again, we mentioned this, but it's not really delving into anything surreal. It's just kind of like them just talking about like, and a lot of it doesn't lead anywhere, which I also wouldn't care about, except that we actually spend time with, like, he cut the one of the victim's fingernails on the right hand down to the quick. Like, that doesn't add up. Like,
that scene fucked me up, dude.
Yeah, I mean,
that
it's
was
gross.
Rough.
It's
I was
effective.
into it. I was like, okay.
I don't mind that, but like, it doesn't add up to anything.
Oh, it's literally
again,
nothing.
like,
it's just funny. You're just like, oh, okay, you're getting me. You're getting me excited, and it's like, oh,
just nothing. Yeah, I guess that's the thing. It's just a lot of scenes of them also repeating dialogue of like, "Oh, I don't drink." Like all the like, how many times has he mentioned that he doesn't drink? Like, and it's just like, I don't go to an Argento film for fucking character development. I want to see some fucking like gnarly kills and
I don't give a shit about these characters whatsoever. Like, these people mean nothing to me. I don't want to remember.
Why are they talking and not dying?
I don't want to remember their fucking names. I don't care who they are.
Yeah. One of them plays a harp, I guess, and the other, like trauma. All the other ones trauma. That's it.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
Also, the amount of times they show that, like, what do they call it, an English horn just being jabbed into that person's mouth.
That is fucked.
It's fucked. But the amount of times they showed it. The first time they showed it, I was like, that is really fucked. But then they show it like 3 times, and it only kind of gets funnier with each time. It was like, are they going to do it again? Oh!
That's not how you use instruments. This is wild. Yeah.
Oh.
Strangely,
Someone did that.
Go ahead.
Someone did that to my music teacher in elementary school once. No, that's awful.
Like,
Sure they did.
Oh.
No, not even kidding. I had like a tyrant of a music school teacher in elementary school. Her name was Mrs. Stonebreaker.
Are you fucking kidding me? That was her fucking name?
I am not kidding.
Is that her...
That was her real name. She was the absolute worst. And when we wrote a school newspaper in 4th grade, I had a friend who wrote a fake article for the school newspaper about how she got frustrated trying to teach us how to play recorders, so she turned into a wild ape and got shot down by the Air Force. Got in so much trouble.
I can imagine getting very frustrated with the recorder.
Yeah. And I'm like imagining if that was like what happened now, like that teacher would totally like take a photo of it on their phone and then like discipline them, but then go up to every teacher and be like, "You'll never believe what this kid wrote." Like,
that is the funniest thing I've ever.
Yo, if I was watching a movie and like the hardcore teacher was named Stonebreaker, I'd be like, okay, that's a little on the nose, you know.
Oh, Stonebreaker, that's incredible. I cannot believe that was her actual last name.
oh yeah.
I cried.
Who knows where
I'm
she is now?
crying. That was so funny.
Remember when we had to bring the recorders home from music class and our parents just wish we didn't exist?
I remember seeing so many tweets from angry parents when the pandemic began where they were like, they're making us teach our kids recorders over Zoom.
Oh, God. Like, you're a little out of pitch. How do you know?
Yeah. My favorite was my mom would make me go play it outside so the neighbors would have to listen to me playing
They're like, hey, can you tell your daughter to be quiet? Yeah, that's what I've been trying to say. Yeah.
Me trying to figure out how to play Amazing
Hot Cross
Grace.
Buns.
Amazing Grace. It was the level. I was getting like the black, but we got like karate belts on our recorder, and I was getting my black belt with Amazing Grace.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Sorry.
So, Sleepless from 2001 starts out.
Starring Mrs. Stonebreaker?
Yeah. For some reason, even though this movie is 2 hours long, the plot description on Wikipedia is 2 paragraphs, and
nothing happens.
I noticed that. I was like, Kevin, what are you gonna do for the plot?
I'm just gonna make stuff up. But the fact that Van Wilder had like 14 paragraphs is just saying a lot.
And it's half an hour shorter, and there's no plot whatsoever.
They're just like, so they get the pastries, right? And then they have this dog, okay? Yeah, they just have to really over-explain it. Anyways, Detective Moretti, played by Max von Sydow, is investigating a series of murders in Turin in 1983 known as the Dwarf Murders. The main suspect, a Giallo novelist named Vincino di Favoriti.
Vincenzo, I believe, is his name. Is how you pronounce his first name, at least.
Okay. A person with dwarfism, I assumed, turned up dead, and the case is considered closed. However, 17 years later, a similar series of murders begin and draw a since-retired Moretti back into the case. They pretty much say that this guy was found shot in the head, but they were just like, but we don't know if somebody shot him or if he shot himself, and I was like, you're detectives, you should know that.
Yeah, that's the thing. Max von Sydow says, like, well, we didn't used to write this stuff down, we just keep it in our heads. I'm like, that sounds like bad police work. I feel like you
that's the John Mulaney joke.
Yeah, we just keep it in our head.
Of we found blood by the victim. Gross. Mop it up.
Back to my hunch.
Back to my hunch.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah.
It's like, no, we keep it in our head. But yeah, aren't you the guy that's just like 17 years later, just like, what do you remember about this? Nothing.
Yeah, nothing. I kind of expected the parrot to sort of say certain things back.
God.
That would have ruled, dude.
That would have fucking ruled. What's more Giallo than a fucking talking parrot, like, reveals case, like, the details about a murder case? Yeah. That's the most Giallo shit I've ever fucking heard.
Behind, like, a blood red background. Yeah.
Oh my god, yes.
While Goblin is just wailing on the score. Moretti teams up with Giacomo Gallo, that'd be funny.
That would be
who's
Giacomo Giallo?
Giacomo Giallo?
Is it Giancone?
Giacomo. Giacomo is the
or Giacomo.
Yes.
Oh Jesus, that just made up a fake name.
Giacomo Jolly, yeah, whose mother was murdered in the 1983 spree, which is what the first thing we see is when he's a little kid and Max von Sydow's like, "Oh, fucking do whatever it takes to solve this," and yeah. To determine if oh my god, I'm just Lady Gaga in the shit out of this. Determine if De Fabrizi is still alive or was actually innocent of the crimes for which he was accused. As the murders continue, the investigating duo discovers that the murderer is arranging their murder to an old nursery rhyme about the killing of animals. That's menacing. So scary.
I do love that Max von Sydow has that line through that he's like, what was that other book called, Animal Farm? Who wrote it?
Animal
I read it a long time ago. Yeah, or I just read it. Does he say he read it a long time ago, or he just read it and doesn't remember who George Orwell?
I was joking with Kevin before we started recording. Like, that's like a bit that like I'm like, is that like a bit that he's doing? Like, I'm like saying like, oh yeah, you know what song I love? A Photograph, not the Ringo Starr one, but the one by Weezer or something. Just like the wrong song or whatever. I don't know. I'm just like, I like both those songs, but like I'm just thinking of like.
I'm surprised he didn't say Nickelback.
Nickelback.
For a second.
Come on.
Weezer
I thought you were Canadian. What's going on?
Photograph off of the very underrated Green album. But yeah.
Anyway, back to Weezercast. Ultimately, it's discovered. There's literally only one paragraph left. This is all I have to work with. There's either 2 paragraphs on Wikipedia or there's a plot synopsis on IMDb that is like 18 paragraphs long.
I could fill in the blanks, by the way, Kevin, because I took a lot of notes while watching this. If
Yes, please. I would just say the last paragraph and then we can go to that. But ultimately, it's discovered that Lorenzo is the murderer, that he had begun killing when he was just a child, hence why De Fabrizi was suspected due to the similarity in height.
Yeah, and Lorenzo is Giacomo's best friend from childhood, who calls Giacomo back home because I think Giacomo is like working at like a Chinese restaurant in Rome, I think, and then like he gets a call from Lorenzo who says like you need to come back home because the murders are starting up again, or like, and then it turns out Lorenzo was the one who did it. He's like just sort of sadistically taunting his friend because he thinks he's playing a game, as he says at the end of the movie.
How the fuck does anyone expect anyone to keep track of all these fucking people and all of their relationships in these Giallo movies? I swear to God, it's like they all have the Giallo movies always crack me up. Like, oh yeah, that one guy we saw for 2 seconds is the killer. Like, surprise! It just makes me fucking crack
you,
me up.
my cousin's second removed from marriage. I can't believe it. And you're like, what?
I mean, I will say Lorenzo does scream killer status though when like you see him like at his apartment and he's like talking about like the murders while like looking off camera and like smirking. I'm thinking, you seem evil. I wonder if you're a killer.
Another murder, you say?
My favorite example of this, although it's not a Giallo film, in fact, it's a terrible movie, is if anyone's seen the movie 88 Minutes, Al Pacino in that movie goes around asking everybody about their first and last names, and they're all like Kim Cummings and like Guy LaForge, and just being like, who are all these people? Like,
what are you talking about?
No, the movie 88 Minutes, that is like, oh, if you want a bad movie. That's also got some torture porn in it. I mean, it's not a horror movie, but it's
88 Minutes, a movie that is famously 105 minutes long, yes.
Oh, yeah. It's something.
He has 88 minutes to solve a murder. His own.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's the most incredible tagline I've ever read.
Oh, yeah. It's incredible. There's also, that movie also starts in, like, 1996, and, like, the first line is there are these 2 teenage girls hanging out, and one of them goes, I can't believe Princess Diana died.
Did you hear about the Nirvana singer Kurt Cobain? I can't believe he passed away.
Yeah.
We're in the 90s, if you haven't known. Yeah. Lorenzo also reveals that the only reason the murders stopped was because he had traveled to another country where he continued murdering according to the nursery rhyme. That's all Wikipedia got.
and then he shot, and the credits roll while the cops roll into the place, and also seemed to fuck up the crime scene by like stepping on his asthma inhaler, which was like part of like the murder. Because like that's the thing, like Giacomo says, like I don't remember the killer's face, but I heard a hiss and a whistle, and then at the end of the movie it's like, oh my gosh, it was your asthma inhaler that I was hearing at that time, and then like the cops just like step over it and say like, seems like a murder-suicide with this guy's dad. And then it's like, well, I guess they fucked that case up. Yeah.
They had Chief Wiggum on the case during that time. Like,
Take him away, boys. Yeah. I think the tagline for this movie is, actually, it's one of the critics' quotes. It actually says, "We'll do for inhalers what Jaws did for sharks." Yeah. Bryden, your notes. What do you got to?
I mean, we could talk about some of the set
pieces
pieces in this movie. I mean, like, there's like just incredible sequences of suspense that, like, are like really like for how long they go on. I mean, like they really do a good job of sustaining the tension. I mean, like the train set piece where
oh, it's so good.
It starts with a prostitute or a sex worker. I feel like it's the more politically correct term. Sorry about that. Where she goes to visit a client and she's like uncomfortable with like some of the things that he wants her to do, and then like while she's leaving, she trips over a box that reveals like a bunch of knives and like hatchets, and that's when the Goblin score really kicks in, where like there's like a big glass of organ music, like, really hitting home the drama of this revelation. And then while she's rushing out trying to get away from this clearly fucked up situation, she grabs a blue bag, and while she's on the train, she finds like a bunch of like newspaper clippings about the murders from the 80s, and
typical shit,
and diagrams that like are hand drawn and like murder pictures, and she's like, oh my gosh, okay, so I have all of the evidence, and calls up her friend to come pick her up. But then the guy that she was with calls and says like, you have my file, I know where you are too. And that's like the really, and like the whole scene is like shot like also a lot of the time from like these like high angles that really make you feel like some omniscient force is watching. So that really, like when he says like, I hear a train, I know where you are, and like, that really hits home like the fact that she's like just trapped in this situation. You know, she's just like she keeps like getting into these parts of like the train where you think that she's safe, where she finds a conductor, then he gets knocked out, and then, you know, she's hiding in like this like sort of like rubber curtain, and like that's really cool. Like the sound design, like it has like this weird squishy sound when she hides inside the rubber curtain, and like
that visual of her face peeking out reminded me of early Argento, like, and how like just the use of distorted faces is so effective. Even though that like I think about like the woman in Suspiria getting pushed against the plate of glass and how unsettling that is. Even though that's like even though she's doing this to herself, like, and is not getting hurt, it really did make me be like, oh yeah, we're back in Argento land, and then you know, we still are, but like it's more muted. Also, Bryden, I don't know if or everyone, I don't know if you looked at the IMDb page for these actors, but half of their profile pics are for their performances in this movie, including the train conductor.
Hell yeah,
who is just a photo of him being knocked out.
It's what I do best.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, also, like, too, like, I mean, this is, like, the thing that Argento seems to do well, just, like, in the two movies of his I've seen, where, like, you really feel, like, every impact of the violence, like, when, like, the knife, like, hits the thumb, and then, like, you see it, like, get caught, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like, you're just, it's obviously not, it's, like, the amount of blood, and, like, it's, like, it is, like, I guess, like, exaggerated, but it is, like, you get the visceral impact of all that, but, yeah, and then, so when the train, like, drops off at the station, her friend like grabs the file and like finds out that her friend is dead, but then like she like goes out and tries to get like help from a cabbie who's like, you know, just like totally like awful to her and says like fuck off and everything, and like then she she gets like killed in her car, and that's like another like really gruesome scene where she gets stabbed in the back of the neck, and like the screen goes like completely red. It's like you're taken like inside.
I actually rewound that because I thought that was really cool, but I also couldn't tell what I was looking at. Where I was like, are we in the knife's point of view of just like in the neck? Like I couldn't really tell.
It was
wild. It was very cool. Yeah.
But yeah, like that train sequence, like the greens and the darkness, it just really feels very voyeuristic and creepy. And then whenever that woman dies, and then it goes to her friend that's outside the train, and it's raining, and it's just really dark and blue, like it's just really good shit that first like 15-20 minutes. I have to talk about how Artisan advertised this movie and the poster they have for it. It is the most fucking weird ass. It's a guy with green eyes and like a skull bottom half of his face, and he has a hand pushed up to the poster with a woman in it, and the tagline is creepier than Jack the Ripper. I don't know how that's getting anybody in the theaters or renting this movie, but
I mean, from hell.
I just looked at
the Jack the Ripper movie comes out that.
okay.
That's what you're going off of. I don't know. Jack the Ripper was in that summer. I don't know.
Yeah, they're trying to get people at Blockbuster.
A lot in the early odds, and now he's back out. Yeah,
yeah.
It was a real fad.
Just trying to get people at Blockbuster. They're like, oh, From Hell is out. Oh no, what are we gonna get? This movie's creepier than Jack the Ripper. We gotta get this shit. Yeah.
There's a few posters that are very strange. Like, there's another one where I'm just like, is that even a character in the movie? I can't tell.
Well, the Letterbox poster, I think, is like the first character who gets killed when she's like up against like the train window while she's like
right, because that's the Blu-ray cover. Right
there, you go. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, so that's like that whole scene is incredible, and then yeah, I mean, where do we go from there? I'm looking through my notes of what happens afterwards.
I mean, that's kind of the problem with this movie is so much of this movie is just fat that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like interesting stuff on like the edges of the movie, I guess, with like I'm not entirely sure if this movie has like a whole lot to say, I guess, but like I guess just sort of about how like I guess this killer goes uncaught because like the rest of the world that like they're living in is run by like a lot of misogynistic people. Like there's like the cabbie who like, you know, hates sex workers and then like finds like her pen and like tries to pawn it off, but then gets like brutally murdered while trying to like sell off the pen or whatever. He gets stabbed with the pen. That's great. But then like also like the cops are kind of like making like glib jokes when they see like the signs of like the struggle with like the nails. Like they say like, oh, it looks like she fought back. Like there's DNA under her nails. They don't really care about what happened to her like as a person. They just think like, oh, well, like that will maybe get us like a good that will like end to the end of the case or whatever. And that's like, I don't know. There's like maybe something there. And Saito is like more of like a human touch. But yeah.
I do have to say it was like a lot of Argento's giallos have sex workers being treated like this, but boy oh boy is it frustrating to see him have the same treatment of sex workers in the 2000s as he did in the 70s.
Yeah. There was a lot of like
age well. Like I mean, I get that things weren't much better, but it still was just like, ooh, buddy, like you didn't. There was just no, and he just very much took that sensibility and put it here without any kind of thought about what that would look like in that context.
Yeah, agreed. And it's like, you know, I mean, I know this is going to sound kind of weird, but in the earlier ones, at least they were kind of beautifully shot, or like, I don't know, that sounds weird. But
I like, no, it's weird because like, I kind of know what you mean, and also, it didn't feel, I guess because they felt so fantastical, they didn't feel as objectifying. But I also feel like we were so used to giallo of the 70s being a very specific kind of objectification and exploitation of women that like is icky, but like at the same time like you get it, and then taking that and not kind of adapting it to where we are now is just not the move. I feel like it just it fits. Like, I can watch it and it fits in that time period, and I have no problem. Like I can see the problems and still enjoy it, but like in 2001, like that wasn't.
And the fact that they're getting called like dirty whore, like right before they're getting killed and stuff. Like
it's just...
there's a kill where like I forget who it is, but one of the women like gets her face just like hit up against a wall numerous times. I was like, this is a little much, and also it's not like fantastically lit or whatnot where I can get lost in that. It's just like this is just grim and brutal. A little too far.
There's not really any style there. I mean, I guess it's like she bites his hand for an extended period of time, and I guess that's why all of her teeth are getting knocked out, but that's not... It is just voyeuristic without any sense of, like... Yeah, it's played more matter-of-factly. Also, some of the sound effects are bad. You know, like, there are a few punches that are thrown, and it's, like, really horrible to watch. But the sound effects are also, like, really goofy, but it's not, like, played for laughs either. So that was upsetting, you know? Like...
Yes.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think I disagree with you about that particular scene. Not about, like, how it's not savagely shot. It is striking to look at.
And nor should it be played for laughs. It's very brutal. Like, that's the thing I want to
I got what you said.
I know what you mean. Those sound effects are jarring for how... Yeah, you're right about that. But, I do think that one scene with the teeth getting knocked out, that scene, like, the build up to that scene is very strikingly shot.
Yes.
It is, like, the long shot, and then, like, it pulls back, and then you see, like, at the edge of, like, the frame with, like, the foreground and everything, it's, like, the killer's shoulders, like, are watching them. And you're like...
And I didn't even notice that until, like, 10-15 seconds in, and I was like, oh, shit.
That's a
like,
really interesting way of Argento really making you, like, hone in on, like, what's going on screen, like, really guiding your eye. But, yeah, I'm not entirely sure what ideas the movie's in service of, or the craft is in service of, rather.
It doesn't even need to be in service of anything as long as it's entertaining or, like, is well done, but it's kind of just ugly a lot of the time without any, like, you know, it also looks, I mean, I'm sure it was harder for him to get a bigger budget back in 2001 than it was, like, when these films were much more bigger genre pieces, but it looks cheap a lot of the time, and that makes it feel more real, too. Like, it's hard to...
Because the sequel to this, what I was talking about, that they wrote it, they couldn't get the funding for it, so that's why it was shelved. So that checks out.
You can see where the money went, like, with, like, the set pieces, but then, like, it's everything else, like, in between all that stuff, where you're kind of like, what are we doing here? I'm not entirely sure, like, how, like, it seems like he's like trying to make it interesting, but I'm not really sure what he's like, how much intention there is behind it, like with a lot of the dialogue scenes, and also, again, the choppiness of, like, the editing doesn't quite feel like it's contributing to the atmosphere as it is just sort of like, I'm not entirely sure what happened to the edit here, like, if maybe there was, like, some futzing around with it, because I mean, I think I'm not entirely sure what the sources are on it, but, like, it wasn't like this, like, cut, like, there's like chunks of this movie that, like, were cut out, I think, because, like, for content and or anything, but, like, even, like, during, like, the non-violent scenes, there's, like, a bit where, like, Giacomo is, like, having a conversation with Gloria and, like, her boyfriend about, like, the dwarf murders, and then, like, it cuts, like, mid sentence practically to, like, just, like, a shot of the band playing in the club, and then, like, he staggers out of the club, like, a minute later or whatever. It's just like, I don't know. It's not even, it doesn't even throw me off in, like, a way that, like, put me at ill at ease. It just, like, was like, I don't know why you ordered the sequences in this way. It feels just kind of, like, random, and I'm not sure what it does. But yeah.
It all feels kind of half-baked, frankly.
Yeah, but, like, I think it's a mess, but it's an interesting mess.
I just think it's also very interesting, too, because this was your first exposure, and this is, like, my, I don't know, 6th or 7th, so we both went in with completely different mindsets, I guess.
It is very interesting, because it's, like, I'm looking at Argento's filmography, and, like, Opera, I think, was, like, what everyone thought was, like, his last good, like, kind of giallo in 87, and I feel like this was almost like him trying to come back with another giallo, but it wasn't a good one.
I do follow a couple, like, just, like, in terms of, like, are there any people who have, like, reclaimed this? There are a couple of, like, film people I follow on Letterboxd who have, like, given this, who, like, one of them has it as, like, Argento's 5th best movie, and then there's, like, another person who has it, like, at their 8th best movie. It's like, wow, you're really passionate about this. Good for you. Like, that's interesting. But yeah, I don't, and also maybe I'm grading on a curve, because I did think this was fun to watch, but, like, maybe I'm also just, like, I haven't seen a lot of giallo, but I also hear, like, some people, like, talk about, I think, like, the plots are not always the most logical, or, like, you know, the most, like...
They make no fucking sense. It's like...
Yeah, no. So maybe I'm grading on a bit of a curve here, but, like, just, like, since this is, like, early days for me, but yeah.
Yeah, it's not like I want to attack this movie where I watched it and was like, I could have easily been like, how'd the killer get her number when she was on the train? Who cares? It doesn't matter. It's dream logic, you know, like that type of stuff, but It is, like, it's more of the stuff that's just not interesting or not particularly compelling or well crafted is my thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or to me, I know that you found there to be a little more craft that was more intriguing or compelling.
Oh yeah, so. Like you really you're still seeing the good parts of Argento coming through, but also just some of the stuff that just doesn't work when it gets away from the fantastical elements of all of it. So that's why it's almost like you're still like, just like the first 20 minutes, like that you could put that up against all the other best Argento movies that I've seen. Like it feels like no time has stopped, and then the rest of it is just like, oh yeah, well, you kind of overwrote this a little bit. But it's just like you can still see that he's in there and he still can do some great shit. So
A couple of other things I want to say. It's funny that we talked about this in conversation with Strangeland, which is
Hell yeah.
Another serial killer movie produced by or distributed by Artisan, and they both have characters who are like saying like, what are these things called computers, and helping us like do these investigations. That's like Max von Sydow's whole thing, like saying we used to call it GPS, or I don't know what this thing called GPS or surveillance is, and also scenes where it's revealed that the killer is like a puppeteer of some sort, because there's a scene in Strangeland where like Robert Englund's wife is like, being like moved by like the killer D. Snyder and everything. And in this, I mean, I don't think we said what the twist is. The twist in this movie is that everyone thinks it's a dwarf killer still, because Lorenzo has been using a dwarf puppet to hide behind other people, to hide behind when committing the murders, which is such a crazy twist.
I mean, that's pretty normal as far as serial killers go. I mean, I don't see how that's that out of the ordinary.
They also they also reveal their hand pretty early on with like, I think it's the second set piece where the woman who has her nails cut off at the quick, like you can tell that person's tall. They're taller than her. So like, and then at one point I think one person says, stop calling him the dwarf killer or something. So I was like, okay, I guess this is like foreshadowing certain things, but I don't know.
This is like a thing that there's like weird moments of humor that like don't entirely jive well with like the rest of the tone of the movie. That's like very gruesome. The scene where like they think it's like a little person who's the killer, and they bring in like a whole like room of like little people who are like suspects and everything, and there's like playing like the bum, 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 sort of like very like jaunty,
so out of place
comical music, and it's like this is ill-advised group of people to be joking about, and also like where the tone just like does not match at all with the rest of the movie. It's just like, okay, Argento maybe the comedy's not his forte, or at least not this kind of comedy.
Final thoughts on Sleepless, aka I'm Not Sleepy.
I mean, yeah, like it's not very good. And I mean, I think it's for Argento diehards as a curiosity, but I wouldn't really recommend this to people who although that being said, Bryden, you like this more than anyone else, so what do I know? I found it to be just... I went in not with like high hopes, but hoping that, I would be like, maybe it's a wounded duck and I can defend it as like, I don't know. Those are the kind of horror movies that I like, where it's just kind of like ones that are like, it always feels good to go back to a movie that was like from a nostalgic part of when I was growing up, and then actually like give it its due, like, and be a champion for it. So I was really hoping for this, because I again, fan of Argento's work, but just most of this didn't work for me. I think the first, as we've all said, the first 20 minutes are great. Everything after that, downhill. So
yeah, my final thoughts are my first thoughts. So not much has changed through the discussion of this, but it is an interesting it's also I do like the type of movies where I'm just like, no, you don't really have to watch that, but there is like a scene, you really got to look up that scene, because that scene's fucking awesome. But I mean, you really don't have to watch the whole movie. Like if somebody just like, should I watch that, I was like, just watch the first like 20 minutes, and then you'll be like, oh, I gotta watch the rest of it. I'm like, no, you really don't. But first 20 minutes is really fucking just really good shit. Mary Beth, final thoughts on Sleepless?
No original thoughts here, guys. Same as everybody else. It's fine. It is a fine movie that if you're trying to get into Argento, you shouldn't watch. But again, Brendan, I guess, fucking did that. So I guess like anything is possible. So that's great. I mean, good. I'm glad you liked it and didn't turn you off of Argento. So that's all that we can ask for. But yeah, it's fine. The opening is great. I think it's a contender of one of like the better opening, like one of the better opening scenes of Argento, but unfortunately falls on its ass, which is so disappointing. But I'm also excited to see what his new movie is going to be like. It seems like he still hasn't learned about sex workers in movies like at all, so we'll see. But like maybe he'll surprise me. So that's that on that. I
mean, yeah, regardless, it's going to be a curio of like, oh man, you've been doing shit for like 50 years and this is your first movie in 10 years. What is it going to be like? And then like more times than not, it's just like, oh, you think it's still 96, don't you?
And you're like, well, I saw it and I appreciate it, and stop making movies.
Bryden, send us home. with your final thoughts.
So I think like the first 20 minutes are definitely the high point, but I think there's interesting stuff interspersed throughout with like Max von Sydow's performance, which I really enjoyed, and I like some of the other set pieces that come after the first one, and I think I really liked the Goblin score. I mean, like how like it will start with like just sort of like a simple guitar riff, but then we'll like layer in like organ music and like other strings, and then like you know like other aspects that like I feel like they really do get like the progression of like sort of like adding in more instruments and like ramping out the speed like to really like build the tension of a scene. Like that's like really well done throughout the whole thing, and I did enjoy sort of, even though the plot is not like the most like tightly written or smartly written thing, it is like amusingly goofy in a way that kept my interest like throughout, especially at the end. Although I will say the pacing is kind of like the thing that sinks it, and also the lack of the sort of lack of like Germain style and like the non-murder set pieces is kind of where the movie loses me a little bit. But I still think this is an interesting little curio that is worth checking out.
Did we mention, I'm sorry if I zoned out for a sec, but the fact that he gets shot in the face, like, just very matter-of-factly at the end was pretty funny.
Yeah. It was out of nowhere.
Like, I did kind of love that, where I was like, okay, that's gross and effective in a way that I enjoy, and it's also so hilariously anticlimactic, where the cops just get there and they're like, oh, Jesus, okay, like, let's get this over with. Like,
outside of the window, outside.
Yeah.
How do they know it's that guy?
It's so
from the back
effortless.
Of his head.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm like, okay, that's a good note to end on. That was fun. But yeah.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Almost Major. Please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Please follow the pod on Twitter at Almost Major to keep up to date with what movies we will be covering in the future. Myself, I can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at Kev Bonesy. Bryden can be found on Twitter at Bryden Doyle and on Letterboxd at J Doyle. Charlie can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at CT Nash91. Once again, thank you for listening.